Hi everyone. I'm not really good at making videos, so bear with me, but I did need to get some lecture time in there, and this is one way we're going to do it. So there are four different theoretical perspectives that you need to be aware of, and we're going to, in this little short video session, talk about functionalism. So here we go. Again, bear with me. Okay, so when we're thinking about theoretical perspectives, sociology uses these perspectives largely, I always liken them to sunglasses. Like we can see the social world from different perspectives, different ideas. And when you put on one pair of sunglasses, it makes shade the world ever so slightly. In this picture, we see that with like a purple hue, but I know that you've all tried on various sunglasses and know you can get them in various tones of rose colored, blue colored, brown colored, and black colored, just depending on which glasses you put on. Today, we're going to be putting on our functionalist glasses, and that is and in many ways, talking about that sociological ideology, it kind of comes with some sets of ideas of how our social world does work. And so it gives us a way of understanding the world from a specific kind of viewpoint. Usually, what sociologists will do is that they're going to use those various viewpoints to see kind of a more complete picture. But this framework gives us the ability to see it in a particular light. Structural functionalism, and in my opinion, is probably the simplest of all those theoretical perspectives. It dates back, it has a little bit of Durkheim tied into it. Talcott Parsons is quite often attributed, another classic old sociologist. And the reality is that a lot of the ways that we see this world go all the way back to Charles Darwin and how he saw the world. Yes, Charles Darwin, as in the theory of evolution. So, from this perspective, we see that society is viewed as a system. It's a collection of interdependent parts that are all working together to stay in balance, to have a sense of equilibrium. This theory kind of looks at the world as being a social organism, and that larger social structures, in terms of social institutions, work together to keep society running smoothly, like a body, and that in just like we have in our body, like where we need our organs and our different physical body parts to keep us going, that they're functional. Society also has certain functions that have to be met for its survival. We have to have food. We have to have reproduction. We have to have intimacy, and we have to have housing. And you get the gist. There are things that we need just to keep our society going. Now, this theory is a macro level theory, meaning that it is looking at the big picture. It's trying to understand how society works in terms of those big level social institutions and organizations. So think big picture when you're thinking about this theory. Don't get caught up in what's maybe happening at an individual level. This theory really won't focus on that. This theory sees that all phenomenon exist to serve a function. It wouldn't happen, according to this theory, if it wasn't doing something for society. So this theory is, in many ways, a very positive kind of way of looking at the world, seeing how everything is working together. So this theory does talk about the world in terms of various kinds of functions: manifest, latent, and dysfunctions. Manifest functions are those functions that are planned. They have the positive desired outcome. They're working in a way that accomplishes the task at hand. So we're gonna apply these in a second. Let me just go really quickly through the different definitions. Then there's latent functions. They're not planned, but they still occur and they're positive. They're a good thing. And then there's also some recognition that sometimes things don't work the way they're supposed to, and those are dysfunctions when there's disruptive or negative outcomes to our social order. So to apply that, think about it in terms of education, specifically college education. We see 65.9% of high school students enrolling in college So what is the functions of attending college? Why do people go there? I'll give you a minute to think about it. Okay, not a minute. I'm not very patient. So I'll just go ahead and hopefully they've occurred to you, popped right into your head. But if not, maybe these are the ones that would have occurred to you if I'd given you more time. So the manifest function is that plan, that intended function. And the manifest function for college would, of course, be to provide a skill set, to provide critical thinking skills and skills that are necessary for the workforce. From a college student perspective, I know it is either to get a better job or to get it simply to get a job. Education, of course, as a social institution, we're more focused on, of course, that more rounded point of view of education in terms of providing skills and greater understanding about the world. Then there's the latent functions. Those unintended functions that occur that weren't necessarily planned but are still part of a positive outcome to attending college. So latent functions can be that we meet a lot of people on college campuses. Social networks are created. You might meet those people that will help you get jobs. You also might meet marital partners if you're a young student on a campus. A lot of people who meet future spouses do meet them while they are in college. Other latent functions can be the fact that, like in today's market, in today's employment market, which isn't very hot, as we are all aware, because of the COVID-19. One of the things it can do is it can put people who are unemployed, it gives them somewhere to be instead of just simply unemployed. They could be working towards getting skill sets that they may need to get hired. Anytime unemployment rates go up, usually what happens is that college rates go up. Also, for students who are still young, when you graduate high school in today's world, 18 is still, well, kind of a child, right? And so, in many ways, this is also a parking ground for maturity. You can go to college and you can spend some time there. Now, I'm sure that you are all really easily able to come up with some dysfunctions. I think these sometimes are the easiest ones, or at least in my little negative head, they just pop right on in there. And so some of the dysfunctions that we see when you're thinking about college attendance might be, well, first thing that pops into my head, of course, would be the cost of it and the fact that you may have to take out student loans. It is also an area where many people will opt not to attend college because of that cost, and that may, of course, cause larger issues of inequality down the road. So, poor people who have less access to the funding necessary may opt to just encourage their children to get a job right after high school, and of course, those jobs tend to be the ones that don't have as many opportunities for growth and improvement, and often they are the ones who trap people in the long run in low-paying jobs. So, one other dysfunction I can think of course, is if you're young, we talked about social networks, you can meet the people that help you find those jobs, but you can also meet all those people, and it's just fun to be on campus. And when you're focused on fun, you're not focused necessarily on your education. So one of those big dysfunctions might be that drinking and all the partying may not make you so successful. You may drop out of a lot of schools before you graduate, or you may not graduate at all because your focus was on the fun instead of the studying. So that is one way that we can analyze our social world. We can look at how social institutions work in terms of providing us those various functions. Other big ideas that are linked with this theory, first of all, is that it leads to evolutionary change. It reminds you that Charles Darwin is linked with this theory. And so this theory is going to focus on evolutionary change that is slow, that when one part of society changes, another part will pick up the slack. So, parents going into the workforce, women used to stay at home and take care of children, but once women entered into the labor market, what we see happening is that someone had to take care of the children. So the education system slowly changed. We saw kindergarten being added as mandatory. We also saw pre-K, now more and more preschool also becoming part of a daily routine. That's the education system kind of picking up the slack. But also the fact that a whole field of daycare centers entered into our world that didn't exist before. It used to be the family that would take care of children. And now we are very comfortable with the idea of strangers, essentially, that we get to know in the terms of daycare facilities taking care of our children. Evolutionary changes. Again, society is constructed, I think I may have mentioned this, maybe not, of various social institutions. And those social institutions have the goal of meeting our needs to make sure that we run as a society smoothly. Finally, I want to point out that the system really sees that we're all in consensus, that we want to be part of the system. We're playing out our roles in our society, and the people who belong to the various social institutions, we all have that goal of making sure that society is running smoothly and that we do want to play a part of this. Now, this theory dominated through American sociology from the 1940s all the way through the early 1970s. One of the biggest problems with this theory is that it tends to be too focused on what is happening in terms of a positive outcome, in terms of those functions. And that might be a positive thing, but it also ignores that quite often there are issues of inequality and that people aren't necessarily in consensus. We see right now with all of the various demonstrations that people don't agree with policing. That would be my big application for today. When we look at policing, and I will talk about this in each of the videos, policing from a structural functionalist point of view is a positive. It makes sure that we follow the rules in our society and that no major forms of deviance can happen because the police are there to not only protect us, but to encourage us to follow the rules, making sure that our society runs smoothly. Now, you all know that from a conflict perspective and from many other people's perspectives, this falls short in explaining and understanding policing in our world. So I'm going to leave it at that for now because that will pick up on the conflict perspective. So at this point, please find the assignment that's linked to this lecture where you're going to consider some various social institutions and the functions that they serve. See you guys later.